You know that feeling, right? You're baking at home, maybe cookies, maybe something else, and you grab that bag of light brown sugar. It seems so simple, so normal. But what if I told you that humble ingredient, uh, it's actually part of this huge multi-billion-dollar global industry, and it's booming. So today, we're doing a deep dive. We're digging into the global light brown sugar market. Our mission really is to pull out the most important bits of knowledge, maybe some surprising facts from the market analysis we've got. We want to help you understand what's shaping this seemingly small market that's actually growing fast.
Yeah, and maybe just to start, let's quickly pin down what light brown sugar is. According to the research, it's basically sugar with a little bit of molasses added back in. And that molasses is key. It gives it that moist texture, that sort of mild caramel taste. It gets used everywhere, baking, obviously, but also confectionery, other food processing, because it tastes good, looks appealing, and, importantly, helps keep products moist.
Right, that moisture thing is probably key for a lot of commercial uses too, not just home baking. So, okay, it's the staple product. Why is it seeing this steady growth now? What's really pushing it?
Well, there are a few big things driving it, and they kind of reflect wider trends we're seeing. First, there's this growing demand for what people see as natural sweeteners. Consumers are looking more closely at labels, maybe seeing light brown sugar as less processed than, say, pure white sugar.
Okay, the natural angle. Makes sense.
Second, bakery consumption is up across the board. Commercial bakeries, yes, but also significantly people baking more at home. And that leads right into the third point. This whole trend towards home cooking, towards artisanal food. People are getting back into making things themselves, and light brown sugar is, well, it's a core ingredient in a lot of that.
Huh. So it's kind of this mix of health perception, maybe comfort food, and this DIY food trend. Interesting. But how big is this market when you put numbers on it? You said booming.
Yeah, the figures we have from cognitive market research are pretty clear on the growth trajectory. So the global market was valued at just over $3.1 billion back in 2021,
3.1 billion.
projected to reach nearly 3.9 billion by 2025. And then looking further out, the forecast anticipates it hitting about $5.6 billion by 2033.
Wow.
That works out to a compound annual growth rate, a CAGR, of almost 4.9% over that whole period, 2021 to 2033. So, steady, healthy growth.
Almost 5% year on year for brown sugar.
Yep.
It's actually pretty impressive. Okay, that's the global view, big numbers. But let's zoom in a bit.
Right.
Regionally, what stands out? Are there specific hotspots or is it just growing everywhere?
It really is remarkably widespread. That's one of the key takeaways. But yeah, some regions definitely lead in terms of sheer size.
Okay, so where's the biggest action? Maybe start with North America.
North America is a huge player, absolutely. Their market was around nearly $1.3 billion in 2021. And that's projected to grow to over $2.1 billion by 2033.
Doubling almost.
Pretty much. And the U.S. is the dominant force there, no question. Makes up a really big chunk of that. But Canada and Mexico are also showing, strong, consistent growth, too. It reflects that general North American taste for it, I suppose.
Okay, big numbers in North America. How does Europe compare? Similar story.
Europe's also showing really strong growth. It was around $920 million in 2021, and that's expected to climb over $1.5 billion by 2033. You've got the big contributors like Germany, France, the UK. They're all looking at markets well over 180 million each by then.
Right.
But what's also interesting is the steady growth across lots of smaller European countries too. Sweden, Denmark, Switzerland, Luxembourg. It suggests it's a really widespread established demand across the continent. Again, probably linking back to those natural and home baking trends.
So a broad base in Europe too. Got it.
Yeah.
What about Asia Pacific? Often a massive growth engine.
Absolutely, and it is here, too. The Asia-Pacific market is forecast to nearly double as well, from just under $600 million in 2021 to almost $1.2 billion by 2033. China's a leader in the region, projected to hit over $327 million. Japan is also significant. And India shows really robust growth, nearly doubling its market size during this period.
India, too. Interesting.
Yeah, and then you also see good increases in South Korea, Australia. Singapore actually shows a notable surge, projected over $50 million by 2033. So yeah, the whole region is definitely part of the story.
Okay, incredible growth there. Let's quickly touch on South America.
South America, same pattern really, projected to nearly double, from about 217 million in 2021 to over 424 million by 2033. Brazil is the key market there, expected to reach over 133 million, but Argentina, Colombia, Peru, Chile, all showing solid, consistent increases. It just points to that same preference for these kinds of familiar, natural-seeming ingredients taking root globally.
It really is a global story then.
Yeah.
What about the Middle East and Africa? Are we seeing similar patterns there?
We are, though the overall market sizes are smaller, the growth trend is there. In the Middle East, it's growing steadily from about 124 million in 21 to a projected 192 million in 33. Saudi Arabia leads there, but Turkey, UAE, Egypt, Qatar are all showing solid growth.
Okay. And Africa?
Africa's market is also set to expand quite a bit, from around 67 million in 2021 up to over 125 million by 2033. South Africa and Nigeria are the key markets, both showing strong upward trends. It suggests, growing demand as incomes rise and consumer tastes evolve, maybe aligning more with these global patterns.
It's really fascinating, seeing this kind of consistent growth pretty much everywhere for something like light brown sugar. So if we pull back from the specific country numbers, what's the big picture takeaway here? What does this all tell us?
Well, I think what's really insightful is how this product, light brown sugar, something we think of as maybe simple, traditional comfort food, it's actually become a sort of quiet indicator of a pretty big global consumer shift. Its demand being so widespread, it really highlights this collective move towards ingredients people see as natural, and also this big resurgence in home cooking, artisanal foods, that kind of thing.
Right.
It's not just about having something sweet. It seems to be about, a return to authenticity, maybe, comfort, especially in, a pretty complex world.
So it suggests a kind of back to basics trend in how people are consuming things.
Exactly. And that probably has implications way beyond just the sugar market or even the food industry.
Yeah, this deep dive really hammered that home for me, how something so everyday like light brown sugar is actually sitting right at the crossroads of these major global trends. Naturalness, comfort, homemade. It's all reflected in that growth.
And if you think about it, connecting this to the bigger picture, this sustained growth, it kind of raises an interesting question, doesn't it? What other seemingly simple, traditional ingredients, things maybe we've overlooked, might actually be poised for similar, significant growth as consumer tastes keep shifting towards natural and artisanal?
That's a great point. Makes you look at your own kitchen shelves a bit differently, doesn't it? Definitely something to think about next time you're baking. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being genuinely well-informed. Today, we're getting into something you probably have sitting in your kitchen cabinet right now. Have you ever really stopped to think about, the journey of that humble bag of light brown sugar?
Probably not, right?
Exactly. It's actually more complex and honestly more interesting than you might think. So, we're taking a deep dive into the light brown sugar market, trends and transformations, using a pretty comprehensive market report.
That's right. And our goal here is, to pull out the really important stuff. We'll look at what's driving its growth, the big challenges it's facing, and sort of where it's all heading. Okay. Because it's more than just, a sweetener. It's like a little window into bigger shifts in what consumers want and what the industry is doing.
Okay, so let's unpack this then. We hear all the time about people wanting more natural stuff. But light brown sugar, it's still sugar, right?
Yeah.
So is this natural angle just clever marketing, or is there something, genuinely different about it compared to plain white sugar?
That's a great question. And it really gets at how perception works, doesn't it? Even though chemically it is sugar, it just feels more wholesome to a lot of health-conscious consumers, particularly, say, in North America and Europe.
Why is that, though?
Well, the core reasons seem to be its minimal processing and the fact that it keeps that molasses content.
Ah, the molasses.
Yeah, that gives it the color, a deeper flavor, even some trace minerals. And this really fits nicely with what people call clean label trends, meaning products with simple ingredients people recognize. Plus, generally, people want more transparency about what's in their food.
I see.
So that perception, more than maybe a huge scientific difference, is what's really driving things for people wanting something authentic for baking, or just, a daily sweetener that isn't stark white or synthetic.
Right. So it's a psychological thing as much as anything, not just what's taken out, but what's left in that gives it these, unique properties. So how does that play out in, say, bakeries or confectionaries? Are these unique functions enough to keep it popular if Maybe costs go up or supply gets tight.
That's a critical point. Its functional benefits are a big deal. Light brown sugar is really valued for holding moisture.
Keeping things soft.
Yeah, exactly. And for its caramelizing properties. So think chewy cookies, moist cakes, muffins, those shiny glazes.
Okay.
We see artisanal bakers, in places like Tokyo, London, New York, really leaning into it for flavor and texture.
Not just high-end places, though.
No, not at all. Commercial bakeries, even big food service chains across Asia Pacific and Latin America, they're adding recipes that specifically use it. And it's reaching home bakers, too, through things like meal kits or baking kits and food influencers showing how to get those authentic textures.
Makes sense. It sounds like it's definitely a star ingredient for many. But what about the push for even, like, purer versions? Are organic or specialty types growing fast? What does that tell us?
Oh, absolutely. There's real momentum in organic, non-GMO, and fair trade versions,
Yeah.
especially with more affluent city consumers.
Right.
Well, think of a gourmet granola brand, maybe, highlighting its organic light brown sugar as part of its clean promise. You see high-end shops and online stores really spotlighting sugar from specific places, Mauritius, Paraguay, whatever, playing up that artisanal, ethical angle.
Right. The origin story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And broader than that, these versions are showing up in functional foods, too. Energy bars, herbal teas, even Ayurvedic preparations in India. Its natural profile and sort of earthy taste add something beyond just sweetness there.
Okay, so lots of positives, lots of growth areas, but let's flip to the other side. Even if it's seen as natural, it is still sugar. So what's the pushback?
Yeah.
Is it just getting lumped in with all sugars under that big health cloud, or are there challenges specific to light brown sugar?
That's the real irony, isn't it? And yeah, it's a major constraint. Despite that natural halo, it absolutely gets caught up in the scrutiny from public health bodies and wellness campaigns everywhere.
Because of obesity, diabetes.
Exactly. Those global health concerns are really shaping consumer behavior and, critically, government policy.
Right.
You look at places like the UK, Mexico, India, they've brought in sugar taxes or stricter labeling rules,
Right.
and that pushes manufacturers to reformulate, maybe use less sugar, and it definitely nudges consumers towards zero-calorie or reduced sugar options. So light brown sugar is kind of stuck in the middle there.
Okay, so beyond the health debate, which hits all sugars, are there other, maybe more specific market pressures that hit light brown sugar harder?
There certainly are.
Yeah.
Price volatility for raw sugar is a huge one.
Meaning the price swings up and down.
Yeah, wildly sometimes. It's driven by supply chain issues, extreme weather, geopolitical stuff.
With a drought somewhere.
Precisely. A big drought in Brazil, or maybe subsidy changes in India that can mess with global cane sugar supplies, which affects prices for everyone buying it. And this pressure, it's even worse for the organic and specialty producers. They already have higher costs for certification, labor, logistics. It makes long-term pricing really, really tricky and unstable for them.
And just practically speaking, I know this myself, light brown sugar, it can get clumpy, right, if you don't store it perfectly.
Oh, yeah.
Is that a known issue for the industry? Are they trying to fix that?
It absolutely is a known issue, a very real limitation. It just doesn't have the shelf life white sugar does.
Because of the molasses.
Exactly. That moisture content makes it prone to hardening, clumping up, especially if it's humid, which complicates storage, logistics. Think about tropical regions or places using it in bulk, like bakeries.
Must be frustrating.
It is. And you get quality concerns from consumers, from retailers, when the product basically gets hard as a rock. So that's pushing demand now for better packaging, something more moisture resistant.
Okay, so given those hurdles, the health stuff, the price swings, the clumping, let's look ahead. What trends are shaping its future? How are brands trying to stand out now?
Well, one of the really interesting trends is this big focus on premium packaging and storytelling.
Storytelling for sugar.
Yeah. Brands are moving past basic plastic bags. They're using things like resealable craft pouches, nice glass jars, very specific origin labeling, organic muscovado from the Philippines or something.
Make it feel special.
Exactly. Reinforce quality, authenticity. And what's interesting is that younger consumers, Gen Z, millennials, especially in cities, they're drawn to QR codes on the pack that give them info on sourcing, carbon footprint, fair trade stuff.
Wow, transparency right there.
Yeah, it builds a whole narrative around this, fairly simple ingredient.
That's clever. Moving beyond just the product, how's e-commerce fitting into this? Changing how it gets to us.
Oh, e-commerce is huge. It's a massive catalyst. Platforms like Amazon or Big Basket in India, Thrive Market, they let these smaller niche regional brands go national. even global.
Bypassing the supermarket shelves.
Right. And we're seeing premium light brown sugars pop up in subscription boxes, meal kits, health boxes, baking sets. It introduces them to new people.
And social media.
Big role there, too. All that baking content you see online, reviews, influencer endorsements, that shapes how people see it and definitely drives online sales. It's a very visual thing online.
Right. Okay, so beyond the packaging and the web presence, how is it finding its place in the sort of broader health and wellness world? What's its role there?
It's finding a growing niche in functional foods and drinks, actually,
Huh.
often positioned as the natural sweet part.
In wellness drinks and things,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a natural profile, that slightly earthy taste. It makes it pretty versatile. It blends well with traditional health ingredients and modern ones, too. So you see it used with ginger, turmeric, lemon, cinnamon.
In teas and syrups.
Exactly. Creating clean label teas, syrups, maybe detox drinks. It appeals to health-focused consumers who'd rather have a less refined sweetener.
Got it. So bringing this all together, what does it mean for the companies involved, the big guys and the smaller brands? Who are the key players and what are they actually doing?
Well, if you look at the market landscape, you've got the global giants, Sudzucker, Tate& Lyle, Cargill, Imperial Sugar. Names you might recognize.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have these emerging specialty brands doing interesting things, like Wholesome Sweeteners or Lotus Health Group.
And how are they all coping with the pressures we talked about?
They're actively responding to the regulations, the shifting consumer feelings, that demand for transparency. They're innovating in sustainable sourcing, creating new product variations, really working on their digital branding.
So it's quite dynamic then.
Very dynamic. You basically have the mainstream companies dominating the sheer volume, but these niche players, they're building serious loyalty through, like we said, storytelling, ethical sourcing, and pushing functional innovation.
We've really covered a lot today. Started with its appeal, that sort of natural perception. Then the big hurdles, health concerns, tricky supply chains, and ended up with some really interesting innovations in packaging, online sales, even its role in wellness foods.
Absolutely. It really shows that light brown sugar isn't just something sweet you add to coffee or cookies. It's this fascinating little reflection of much bigger trends, what we prefer, our health awareness, the complex web of how things get made and sold globally.
So a final thought for you listening. Given this balancing act we've talked about between health worries and the desire for natural, authentic stuff, what other everyday products, things sitting in your own pantry perhaps, might be on the edge of a similar kind of surprising transformation?
Interesting question.
It makes you think, doesn't it? How
Yeah.
even a simple ingredient can tell such a big story about the world we live in.